this is John Sadak, TV voice of the Cincinnati Reds, and you're up for Late Night Reds Talk.
What's going on, everybody? Happy Monday night, and you know what that means. Another fantastic edition of Late Night Reds Talk Live, brought to you by the Believe Podcast Network and Bet Online. We'd like to wish you a happy betting New Year's. We continue our march to the playoffs and beyond. Bet Online remains the number one spot for all the best sports wagering action for 2022. New year and new updated desktop and mobile website to sign up today and receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Just use our promo code BELIEVE, BLEAV, to get started. From football, basketball, hockey, boxing, and UFC, right to your favorite Vegas casino games. Don't wait to take advantage of the amazing offers for 2022. Bet Online, the fastest and easiest way to wager on all your favorite sports. Bet Online, where the game starts. And now that we got that out of the way, let's have another fun night of Late Night Reds Talk Live as we begin our series on discussing the NL Central foes. We have a really fun guest for this for the first one. Before we get to that, we'll introduce our excellent panel. First, our excellent producer, the man who puts it together for us each and every week, producer Nick Kirby. How are you, sir?
Hey, what's going on? Super excited to start this series and dive into each of the teams in the division.
Absolutely. Very excited as well. And we have joining us, welcome back after he took last week off, former big leaguer, Mr. Carlos Guevara.
What's up, boys? How y'all?
Good, man. Good. How was your week off?
It was good. I don't even remember why I took the week off.
Did you win money on Georgia?
Oh, that's why. Yes.
Good.
No, I did not. I took Alabama.
What?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, I guess I will let it slide this time. But we're excited for our excellent guests. As we said, we're starting our series now. We're going to be discussing the NL Central opponents for the Reds this year and kind of where they stand, how to get ready for them for this season, whenever that may start. And our first guest, he is the host of the Stuffing the Stat Sheet podcast. He is a IBWAA member. He talks gambling, Chicago, and fantasy sports. And you can check him out on Twitter at TheRiot326. This is Mr. Joey Ricotta. Joey, welcome to the show, man. How you doing?
Hey, thanks, guys. Doing good. Appreciate you guys having me on again. And, just like Carlos, I also bet on Alabama. So we have that in common, that we took the L on that. So it's good to be in company with some people that are like-minded, at least, and even if we took the L's. So it's cool to be here, guys. Thanks.
Good, man. We're excited to have you. Before we do kind of get into getting your thoughts and stuff on the Cubs, we're just kind of going to go through their strange timeline from the exit of Theo Epstein on. So obviously, they won the World Series in 2016. The 6 years he's there, they have 5 postseason appearances, 3 first-place finishes, and then he moves on. Shortly after that, they make the trades for Yu Darvish and Kyle Schwarber, and they actually get off to a really good start this year. In June, they're 42-33 and tied with the Brewers for first place. Have a nice solid group no-hitter, and that was pretty exciting. And then, of course, they ran into Jonathan India, as we see here in this beautiful graphic. National Rookie of the Year, Jonathan India. I don't know if you guys heard or not. They fall to third place behind Cincinnati, Milwaukee. Shortly after that, you kind of see the Jock Peterson trade. And then Andrew Chafin, Ryan Tepera, Craig Kimbrell, Anthony Rizzo, Javi Baez, Chris Bryant, and Jake Marisnick all get moved on from the Cubs, and then have a pretty rough year where, for some reason or another, even though they only had a 21 wins rest of the year, did take care of business against the Reds in the second half of the season, as the Reds were having their downfall through the second half instead of making a playoff run. But now they get to here. They signed Yan Gomes right before the lockout. They bring in Nick Madrigal. They signed Marcus Stroman. And most importantly, for Reds fans who are very upset, they claim Wade Miley off of waivers. So as you see, Carlos put his face in his hands there. Obviously, the Cubs, and then yes, there's this report here that they are in discussions. They have potential, have a lot of interest in bringing in Carlos Correa, which I think every team under the sun that can bring in Carlos Correa has interest in him right now. But there's also been reports from Ken Rosenthal that he's unlikely to sign with the Cubs, and also discussed a potential move for Eric Hosmer. So Joey, correct me if I'm wrong, from what, reading these tea leaves, from what it looks like the Cubs have been able to do before the lockout and the rumors that they're linked to, it seems like this quote unquote rebuild, they don't plan on being a long time. Does that sound accurate?
Yeah, 100% from the sounds of it. I mean, this next season, it sounds like more of a transition year, just kind of getting their bearings back, and the progression hopefully will be made by some of these prospects. and then next year could be like a big spend year. I do believe, though, that they showed signs with the Stroman signing that they're at least going to spend some money this offseason, maybe even a little bit more, of course. They have a ton to spend. And then, you look at it, it's like all these guys are off the books. It was more of a retool because of the guys that they were able to get back in some of these trades at the deadline by making the moves that they did. Obviously, Chris Bryant being traded, Javier Baez being traded, Anthony Rizzo traded, Craig Kimbrell traded. So a lot of these guys, they got back prospects that some of them are ready now and some of them are more further down the road. But, the guys that are ready now, you look at Nick Madrigal, you look at Cody Hoyer, who pitched last season and actually pitched pretty well out of the bullpen. Then some of the other guys that they acquired too that could be potentially ready this year, like Caleb Killian, who's a prospect in the farm system now. He was acquired in the KB deal, but he looked great, and I'm really excited to see him potentially this year. So yeah, it does seem like it's more of a retool than a rebuild, because then you're going to have Jason Hayward's contract coming off the books too soon, at least, not for the next couple years, but that's something that Cubs fans are kind of looking forward to, because that contract is just looking like a ridiculous contract in hindsight. So, but yeah, I mean, it definitely feels like more of a retool than a rebuild.
Yeah, we look at it here. You kind of mentioned some of those guys and the moves they made. So this is kind of the projected lineup that Nick put up here. Maybe you can educate us on a few of these guys and kind of give us a little bit more of a fill in. I feel like Nico Horner, they've been waiting for him for 13 years, I think it feels like at times.
Yeah.
You mentioned that Jason Hayward contract, but Nick Madrigal, who I believe they got in the Craig Kimbrell trade, correct?
Yeah, he was in the Kimbrell deal. Yep. And Hoyer. Yep.
And then you bring in Jan Gomes as the backup catcher, who hits pretty well. But some of these, the Alfonso Rivas, the Frank Schwindels, for people who aren't as familiar with those names, can you kind of explain? They kind of talk a little about who these guys are, what would opposing fans can expect from them.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Frank the Tank, he kind of came in there and he's like a creative player. It feels like a lot of my buddies are calling him some made up name, made up guy, because at the end of last year, or the second half of the season, when he got some playing time, he stepped up and he was like one of the hottest hitters in the league, and it was just unreal. Is it sustainable? Probably not. He's not going to hit whatever it was, 362 with a 389 on base percentage. He's not going to do that. But it is encouraging, because you look at his minor league track record and the guy just didn't really strike out at all. He's not a strikeout guy, and he can also hit. I think Steamer projects him right now for 27 home runs. So, and I could be wrong about that, but 27 bombs and a 270 batting average, that's not bad. If you're getting that out of your first base spot and from a guy that's not costing you anything, I'll take that all day long. I'm not sure if he's going to play, every game. They might even use a little bit of Alfonso Rivas if he makes the roster. And then we'll probably get into this a little bit, but, with the addition of potentially the universal DH coming back, it opens up a lot of possibilities here. So maybe you can get playing time with some of these other guys moving around. Obviously, Clint Frazier, that signing, I think that's an under the radar move, because he needed a change of scenery. I think he just had to get out of New York. Obviously, they didn't want him. He didn't want to be there. He's back with his buddy Stroman. I know that you weren't really asking about Frazier, but I think there's a lot of potential here with different guys moving around. And Schwindel, I'm excited, because even in practice, like the players, the teammates, they're like, man, he barrels everything up. Is he going to hit 30, 35 plus home runs? Probably not. He's probably looking at more of like a 20 to 25 home run hitter in reality. But if he hits 270, 275, I think the Cubs kind of got a steal here.
We spent half a show when Frazier got not non-tendered or whatever, begging the Reds to sign him. Honestly, I think I'm more disappointed the Reds didn't pick up Frazier than let Wade Miley go, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, I definitely like the move. I think a lot of teams should have been inquiring about him, because especially with the DH part, he's not that great in the outfield, but his bat, I think it'll definitely play somewhere, and hopefully here.
Yeah,
He's got a strong cleat game. Very strong cleat game.
Oh yeah, he does. He definitely does. He's got some style.
Before we move too far forward into the current team, which is what I want to spend a lot of time discussing, tell us about like your fandom with Chicago and kind of how painful I'm sure it was for the majority of your life, and then getting over that hump and having that 5-year just really incredible run of success, maybe 6 years run of success. What was that like for you as a Cubs fan?
Insane. Just the best baseball I've ever seen in my life, because obviously, you'll have those one-off years where they're competing. You have like the 2003 season where it felt like the year. I mean, I go back to that year so often in my head, and when I'm talking to people, and I'm like, 2003 just felt like the season with Mark Pryor and with Kerry Wood and Sosa and all these guys, and it's just like, this is the season that they're going to do it. Unfortunately, we ran into Steve Bartman in the Marlins, but obviously it's not his fault. I'm not blaming the guy. I don't know anybody that really is at this point. Hopefully there aren't people still out there that are blaming the guy. But no, I mean, I've been a fan since, I don't know, I can remember, honestly. My mom used to take me to Cubs-Cardinals games at Wrigley starting in 98 when the Sosa, McGuire, the home run derby season. That's really what got my fandom, really just enhanced my fandom, I think. And then I started playing baseball around that time too. So, Sammy Sosa, obviously I'm a huge fan for life of him, steroids or not. I'm a big fan of Sosa, but yeah, man, I mean, it was brutal for a long time. I mean, just miserable years, miserable seasons. You'd have a little glimmer of hope, and then it'd get taken away from you. And then it always felt like it was unsustainable. Like some of the moves that the front office was making, it was just like short term, you're buying for a little small window and you weren't really building for anything. And, once Theo took over, it was like, okay, this is the guy that's going to bring us a World Series. And we always have hope as Cubs fans. You have to have hope if you're a Cubs fan, because that's all we had for so many years. But once Theo took over, it was like, yeah, the pieces are falling together, and he started making all the right moves. And, unfortunately they didn't bring home more than one World Series under him, but they were competitive for many years, and can't ask for much more than that.
I can only imagine that year before they win the series when they lose to the Mets in the LCS. Just kind of like, I'm sure you're bummed because obviously your team got eliminated, but also that feeling of like, you know what, like, this is going to be awesome next year. And then obviously the Cavs go and win that unbelievable title. So it's like the craziest sports year maybe ever between, the Cavs title and the Cubs World Series.
Oh yeah. And then you had LeBron, I think, at the stadium too with those when they were playing the Indians in 2016.
That's right.
So it was really cool. I believe, I want to say they were playing across the street or something, and he went across the street and watched the game or whatever. But
yeah, it's literally next door.
Yeah, just right next door. And
share a parking lot.
Yeah, it was crazy though. I mean, like that season before, it really felt like, okay, we're here a little bit earlier than we should be. In 2015, they kind of just got hot. And I mean, that was just an insane year with the NL Central. You guys obviously being NL Central guys, we had 3 teams that year that won. I think it was 95 plus games or something strange like that, 93 plus games. I don't know the exact number off the top of my head, but the Cubs didn't even win the division that year because the NL Central was just so strong. And being able to get that hot and be able to play in the NLCS, I mean, Daniel Murphy was just insane. He took us out, obviously, but it was fun to watch. And then, John Lester, obviously just retiring, he played an insane role here for the Cubs, and I'm forever grateful for him too, just because we don't win the World Series or even get that far if it weren't for John Lester. So quick shout out to him. But yeah, that was it felt like the turning of the tide, and it was really cool. You really were looking forward to 2016, and they performed. They stepped up.
What was that like when they traded for Aroldis Chapman? Was it like, was it weird for you because you rooted against them for so long?
Yeah, that was kind of weird. Seeing him in the Reds uniform for so long and just like, man, I can't stand this guy. He just throws smoke. He's so good out of the bullpen. And you don't never want to face him in the late innings of games. But I was excited, man. I was so happy. You didn't want to get rid of Gleyber Torres for him, but it's like, yeah, this is the time. We need a World Series. It doesn't matter at this point. Why are you hanging on to these prospects when you can get somebody like Chapman? And he was like Lester. Without Chapman, we don't win the World Series either. I know that Game 7 wasn't his best. Obviously he gave up the home run to Rajai Davis, but he was burnt out at that point. Joe Madden was using him like he was the only pitcher in the bullpen, which he kind of was, to be honest. So I don't know. I'm grateful for Chapman too. I mean, he was just an incredible trade acquisition.
Yeah, I could only imagine that Game 7, man. That would take years off of my life. My wife is an Indians Guardians fan, and that was stressful just watching her watch that game. So I couldn't imagine that being my team.
I literally think I have gray hairs. Just overnight, I got gray hairs.
I bet. Yeah, that was one of the all-time games for sure. Of the players that the Cubs let go the last couple years, like the Bryants, the Rizzos, the Baez, who was the one that you were most disappointed or whatever that they didn't get a long-term deal?
Man, that's so tough. On the field wise, I'm most disappointed that they couldn't get something done with Chris Bryant, because I believe that he's the guy that you build a team around, or he's one of the guys that you consider a core piece of your team that you build around. Not that Anthony Rizzo isn't or wasn't, because once he was acquired from San Diego, and it's kind of cool that you had the San Diego thing on before here. Now we're talking about – oh, yeah. It was somebody else's. But no, obviously once we got him, he was the leader of this team for so long. He was the cornerstone, but was Rizzo. And he's my favorite player out of this entire length of time with the Cubs. Their competitive years. Rizzo's been my favorite player since he was acquired. But I would say on the field wise, Chris Bryant was the guy that made the most sense. He's the most versatile. He could play outfield. He could play third. He could play first even. So I'm really disappointed that they couldn't get something done with him. I know all the stuff with, arbitration and all that, and, the service time issues. I don't think he really ever wanted to leave Chicago, though. I think he wanted to be a Cub, and he showed that. He said that all the time. So I'll never really believe that he just wanted to leave the Cubs. I think they just assumed that they couldn't get something done with him, and maybe they just didn't want to pay the price. But, I'm very upset about that. And I thought that Rizzo, now in hindsight, it looks like they made the right move, because he was kind of tailing off, and he does have some back issues, and aging first basemen aren't really the greatest to sign long-term or to extend. So money-wise, it makes sense. Same thing with Baez. I mean, he's a strikeout-prone guy. He's very flashy. He's powerful as a shortstop. He hits a ton of home runs. He can drive guys in, but he's also very hit and miss. When he's down, he's very down, and when he's up, he could carry a team. So you need somebody. I like the consistency more from a Chris Bryant type of player. So that was the guy that really stings.
Yeah, Chris Bryant, he's such a perfect guy to build a team around. Like, he's not going to be your top 1, 2, maybe even 3 paid, player at a certain position. But you can get him a little bit cheaper. I mean, he's still going to be and don't get me wrong, he's still going to cost a lot, but he's cheaper than most, and he's probably more valuable than most because he can play everywhere. And he's still young. Like, he's. We've said many times on here, we wish we could have got him at the end of last year for not that much money. And he's an absolute difference maker because you could plug him in everywhere. And if that guy gets hot, you're screwed on the other end.
Yeah, I feel like Bryant definitely might be the steal of the offseason for the players that are, going to earn a decent salary. I'm really high on Bryant, and I think you're right on Rizzo. I could totally see Frank the Tank outperforming Rizzo in 2022. I don't think that's too crazy of a, far-fetched thing, so, and obviously the price is significantly different. So I think the Cubs probably made the right decision there. Who's maybe a player, as we look at this roster next season that you, really an under the radar player that maybe, we're not looking at, that you think is really maybe poised for a breakout year, or something like that?
Ooh, man, it's interesting. I think honestly, let's see what happens with Horner and with Madrigal. I mean, I think Contreras is obviously, I think he's going to have a better year than he had this past year too. I know he's going to the final year of team control, and maybe you can't call him like a breakout because we've seen it from him in the past. He's one of the better hitting catchers in the league, but this past year he didn't have his best season. I think the addition of Yan Gomes is actually a little bit under the radar because now he can spell Contreras. He doesn't have to play as many games behind the plate, and I think that really wore down on him. Obviously, he got hurt a little bit this past year, but he can't be as productive as a catcher when you're playing as many innings or catching as many innings as he was. And I think the DH will allow him to get out of the catcher spot as well. So I look for him to actually have a bigger season at the plate. And Horner, if he could stay healthy, man, I know we've been talking about it we talked about it a little bit. Feels like Horner every season we're just like, oh, Horner this year. If he could stay healthy, that's been his biggest problem, just staying on the field. I think, man, he could have a good season here. And Madrigal, he's going to be one of the better contact hitters in the league. He already is. Obviously, he got hurt with the White Sox, and that's part of the reason why I think they just threw him in the deal, because they're like, he can't help us this year, and we're in win now mode. So let's go ahead and ship him for Kimbrel, somebody who can help us right now, and we need bullpen help. But Madrigal, man, he does not strike out at all. He's going to give you probably a close to 300 average, if not better. Can he hit for power at all? I don't know. I'm hoping that maybe the baskets at Wrigley will help him a little bit. Maybe the wind is blowing out on some of these days and can give him a couple extra home runs. But I'll take that contact all day from a team that really over the last few years, we haven't seen many contact guys. We've seen them strike out and struggle in key situations, especially with 2 outs and runners in scoring position. That has not been their strong suit. It's really been get guys on base and hit home runs. And now we're seeing some diversity in this lineup, and I really like it.
Yeah, Madrigal feels like that guy where after our second series playing the Cubs, I'm going to be sending a tweet like, can we ever get this guy out? Like he just feels like that type of player that's like, he's not going to kill you any one certain game, but every single game he's going to be on base. He's going to be extending innings. Like he just feels that type of player.
The Tommy Edman special.
Yep.
Tommy Edman, that guy's been a pain in our butt too.
And would you say, Nick, that Horner is kind of like their Nick Senzel?
Yeah, they've played him pretty much everywhere, right?
Yeah, he's gonna. That's what I'm wondering too. If he's gonna get more time in center field this year, because they have Ortega and Hap out there right now. But I believe, obviously those guys are lefty, better from the left side. Obviously, Ian Hap switch hits. I would like to see him just hit from the left side, but that's a different topic. But maybe you put him in center field and sign a shortstop. I think that's still on the table for them to potentially. I know we were talking about Correa. I don't really think it's going to be Correa, and I think that is a lot of money to commit, and I think it's a lot right now of years that he's going to want, and I don't really know. I don't really see that happening. Trevor Story is still out there. I don't know about that either. Maybe we're looking at probably like an Andrelton Simmons or Freddie Galvis or something like that. I don't know, but I do I like that comp with Nick Senzel, though. It really does feel that way where, yeah, those guys are all the potential in the world, but can they stay on the field?
Hap's kind of been really crazy up and down, man. He has looked like a star player for weeks, and then fell off the map completely. Do you still believe in Hap? Do you think? I know a lot of people in Cincinnati because he played college ball here, followed his career. Like, do you think he's still got, something in the tank that he can be a contributor?
So admittedly, I'm kind of like a Hap Truther. So
Okay.
I do believe in Hap. I do. And it sounds crazy, but he's really he's been hyped up almost every preseason, right? And it looks like it's going to be his year. 2020, he had a really good year. This last year, he started out of the gates. It was awful. I mean, like the first half of the season, you could pretty much just throw it in the dumpster. It was absolutely terrible. Some of that was bad luck. He was hitting the ball right at guys. Some of it was just him, striking out or just looking clueless at the plate. And I look at the second half of the season, and then maybe I'm falling for it again, but I look at like towards the end of the season, and he came on strong, and he really was. It's like something clicked again, and he came back. I look at him, and I think he can be that guy, especially because he's pretty decent at getting on base. He's got some power. I want him to hit exclusively from the left side, because I think we've seen it from some of these guys, like Cedric Mullins, for example. If they can focus on one side of the plate and just, get really good at that side of the plate, I think he could really do some wonders here. The flipping back and forth, I think, is actually an issue from him. Not that he can't hit from the right side at all, because he can hit home runs there too, but it's just, I think it's messing with him. You can't really focus. You can't take as many hacks, or you have to tire yourself out and take as many hacks from each side in the cages and stuff. And I just don't think that that's good right now for this day and age of baseball. You don't need to be a switch hitter anymore. So I'm a believer in him. And I look at also like the projections. I think they have him projected as the highest WAR player for this next season for the Cubs. And that to me is like, okay, they see what I see. And I could be wrong too, but okay, Zips has a 1.7. I thought I had.
Well, they have him split and left also, so that's not his total thing there. So he might be those combined.
Okay.
Do kind of how we did, Nick, with him. Go around and throw some guys out there and go the over/under on him. These projections.
All right, yeah, we could do a couple over/unders. Let's do Hendricks. Do you think he'll be over under 2.6?
Ooh, I'm trying to think of what he's at normally with his career. I think they're probably going to be going a little bit lighter on him than normal with these projections based off of last season, and I don't think that that's really indicative on him, because he's the type of guy that he's such a workhorse and like a smart player that he's going to figure out whatever the adjustments he needs to make. He doesn't rely on speed, power. He relies more on finesse. I would actually go over on his projections there.
And does Joey hit like 700 against him or 800 against Kyle Hendricks?
God, absolutely just crushes him, and he'll probably do it again this year.
That took away from do you have like a great Joey Votto nightmare story about how he's just crushed the Cubs for a decade and a half?
He's got to have at least a couple. We'll get to those later.
Oh, man.
Give him some more, Nick.
Hap is at 1.8, by the way, as his individual Zips projection WAR. Contreras and Wisdom are ahead of him, but he's up there. I mean, for sure. Let's do Wade Miley 2.8. We have to do that one.
Ooh, man, that's probably, I would say probably right in line. I'd probably go under because of just if he can stay on the field too. He'd probably deal with some injuries here. I'll probably say like a 2.5 or 2.6, something like that.
Yeah, I think that's probably what I would have went with too.
Same. Yeah.
I'll do one more. I'm not going to do Hayward just because his WAR number is so fluky because of his defense and he can't hit worth a lick. So he, like, whatever he earns, it's not like a legit number. Nothing to get.
We're just passing him, is what you're saying.
Yeah, we're passing him. Let's do. I'm gonna pull up the actual, since some of these have split positions, because the Cubs like to play guys all around, which I'm a big fan of for sure. Contreras is at 2.6 by himself. What do you think about that?
Ooh, I'll go over because I think he has a bigger offensive season this year. I'll go over on that.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I didn't really think about that idea with him as DH, but I mean, do you kind of see, maybe if they have a DH that Contreras is DHing, 3 or 4 games a week and Gomes is getting, maybe 75% of the starts behind the plate?
No, I wouldn't say it would be that dramatic of a split or dramatic of time off. I think he'd still probably get over 50% of the time behind the plate because he's so valuable throwing guys out. He's so valuable calling a game himself. I think he works well with some of these younger pitchers too. And he's a leader on this team. He wants to catch. Like he's the type of guy, he does not want to sit out any game. So I think he has real problems with the Cubs trying to give him more rest, but they really need to communicate this plan with him. And if he's in the lineup DHing though, or even playing like a corner outfield spot, which we've seen him do in the past too, I don't see that happening a ton with all the depth that they now have, like with even Harold Ramirez signing and stuff. Nelson Velasquez potentially coming up, and he looked great in the fall league this year. That's another option that could potentially even DH too. But I don't see him catching or DHing more than he's catching this year, but I do see him staying in the lineup a lot more often and getting more days off that way.
Yeah, I do think Gomes is known as a pretty good defensive catcher as well, and I would assume they're definitely going to get him in against left-handed pitchers because I know Gomes is a really good hitter against left-handed pitchers. Really platoons well. But yeah, that's kind of interesting. I didn't really think
that's why we got rid of Miley.
Yeah. On Miley, something I definitely wanted to ask you about, Joey, is in Reds country here in recent years, last 2 years, there's been a real strong hatred towards ownership. I know that the Cubs fans kind of had that, with them selling off a lot of the players. Has Cubs fans, do you feel like the majority of them, I'm not talking like the out there ones, the regular guys, do you think they've kind of come back towards the plan of what they're trying to do here? Or do you still feel like there's a real massive disconnect with Cubs fans and ownership?
I think there's just still a massive disconnect with Cubs fans and ownership. I think Cubs fans, much like probably Reds fans, they really blame ownership for a lot of this and not pushing the button or not, spending a little bit more with and pressing up against that luxury tax or going a little bit over and, sacrificing some for some of these years when you were really competitive and going out there and getting the extra player. Something we see like teams like the Yankees do. I mean, why not do that when you have your big money team, you have your big market, you can afford to do that 1 or 2 years. And so they do put a lot of blame on ownership. I don't know if they're looking at it exactly the way I'm describing it right now. They're not talking about like luxury tax and stuff like that. Not everybody, but they are a little bit upset and they think that ownership was trying to be cheap, especially like you mentioned with these trade deadline deals. It felt like doomsday getting rid of all these guys. I mean, guys that meant so much to the franchise, guys that meant so much to Cubs fans. Kids idolize these players. They got little Javi Baez jerseys. They've got Rizzo jerseys. I mean, it was a tough day. That day or those 2 days right there were just, it really hit and it struck a nerve with Cubs fans. And I think some fans, honestly, they are not even watching Cubs baseball yet. Like they have not watched a game, some Cubs fans, since those trades were made. And it's going to be a little bit hard for some fans to come back on board. My advice to fans, or like what I would like to tell fans though, is, sometimes difficult decisions need to be made. And it's not just ownership. It's also part of the GM. This is Jed Hoyer now. It's not Theo Epstein. It's Jed Hoyer running the show, and Carter Hawkins actually the GM, but it's Jed's final say in all this stuff. And Hawkins wasn't even here yet, I don't believe, when the trades were made. But I think they have a plan instilled here now, and they've taken it down this road. They made the difficult decision to go down this path and to kind of retool, and they acquired some guys in these moves that are really projecting really well. They have a lot of upside, a lot of potential. So let's see what they do. Give them a chance. I would say tune in to watch baseball this year. Tune in to watch Cubs baseball if you're a Cubs fan, because there are a lot of good things still going here, and there is a plan that looks to be set in place. And regardless of how you feel about ownership, you still love baseball, right? You still love the Cubs, and there's still some good things here. And they did spend money on Marcus Stroman, so that's something to be positive about.
We found the Nick Kirby of Cubs fans. My man.
And that'll be snippet in our highlight reel later.
I did want to ask you about the prospects. I don't know, Joey, how close you follow this. I know Brendan Davis is a guy I've heard a lot of, has a good chance of maybe making the team in 2020. I believe he's a good center fielder. What are your thoughts on him? If you have any other prospects that maybe we should be watching, or someone you're really high on?
I mean, honestly, so I'm going to sound, this is me sounding like the Cubs homer now, because there's a lot of these guys I'm very, very excited about, but some obviously are going to be down the road. They're not going to be coming here anytime soon. Not all these guys, but you mentioned Brendan Davis. I think it took a lot of people a long time to finally put him up in the ranks with these prospect lists. And he's been rising now for a little while. He's a 5-tool player. I think he's got speed. He's got power. He's got such a quick bat. This guy, and he's got a great glove. Whether he sticks or not in center field or eventually moves to a corner spot, which I think might be the case eventually, but he could be that guy. And I'm not sure if he's going to be up maybe middle of the season, because he just got called up to AAA this past year. And I mean, he could be ready, but I think he probably they would like to see him develop a little bit more. He will get called up, probably, is my guess, at some point, whether it's later in the year or like mid-season. I don't see him making the team out of camp, but I do really like Brendan Davis. Braylon Marquez, he's been dealing with injuries. He dealt with injuries last year. I'm not sure if he's going to be pitching with the Cubs this year or not, but it sounds like he's healthy now, and we'll see how his development goes. He's not, if you were looking at this list and we were to look at like some updated ranks, I would not probably put him second on this list. I know he's on the pipeline list, but he's right now, you're just not sure what you're going to get from him. He throws a ton of gas, but can he even have that type of control? He might be looking at more of like a bullpen arm out of Marquez. So I'm not really super excited about him anymore, but I'm still, eager to see what he can bring. Some of the other guys, obviously, Miguel Amaya's, he's hurt too, so we're not going to see him for quite a while. Hernandez is just, I'm really excited from him. He's a long ways away, though. Pete Crow Armstrong, we'll see. He's got Gold Glove potential in the outfield, center field, so that could be the guy that pushes Brendan Davis maybe to a corner spot. Because Pete Crow Armstrong can really glove it and track balls down in the outfield. We'll see how his bat develops, but it seems like he's got a knack for the bat to the ball aspect. Maybe he can get a little bit more power going. A lot of these guys, though, man, it looks like the Cubs won the Yu Darvish trade, actually. I mean, it was insane. That's another thing we were talking about with the disconnect with the ownership. Fans were really, really upset with the Yu Darvish move because it felt like we could still compete. You have Yu Darvish, you could still compete, make another move, and it felt like they just wanted to get rid of money. And obviously they did a good job of getting rid of money by dumping Yu Darvish. But Reggie Preciado and Owen Casey were two of the guys that they got back in that deal. And these guys look really, really good. They're developing really well. They're still teenagers, but I mean, I'm excited to see what these guys can bring further down the road. We're not going to be seeing them for, another 2-3 years, but I really am excited about those two.
What a baseball name, Reggie Preciado. That's dope.
When I feel like I'm normally pretty aware of like what minor league organizations belong to what major league teams. When did the Cubs form a partnership with the Pelicans? Because I always remember them as a Braves organization.
That is a good question. That is not something I'm actually aware of, to be honest, when that was formed, because I would have to reach out to somebody else to know that. The minor league affiliations are not my specialty as far as knowledge about each individual affiliation. I just know who's on them.
Yeah, because I remember when South Bend was the Diamondbacks organization, because AJ Pollock, when he went to Notre Dame and got drafted by the Diamondbacks, he still played in South Bend, and that's how they drew tickets every night. But I knew about that. Tennessee Smokies, obviously, like my family used to go to Gatlinburg all the time, so I knew about that one. Yeah,
Well, I've got
like
a great Tennessee Smokies story.
Oh yeah, Carlos played on like the world's greatest
one day. Probably gonna have to be
team.
off the air.
Yeah, one of those stories.
It involved fireworks and a couple of big leaguers.
Fair. So I hinted at
2015 was the Myrtle Beach Pelicans when they joined the Cubs. Really cool thing called Google that tells you that.
Yeah.
There you go.
Thanks, Curb.
I knew it wasn't that long ago, but I didn't know when.
Yeah, they have like some of the coolest minor league uniforms too.
They're
pretty sweet. So I joked about it earlier, but I do want to ask because obviously, here we're very pro Joseph Daniel Votto. I'm sure you've heard of him. Pretty good baseball player, and part of his home run streak this year was in Wrigley. He had a 2-homer game there this year. Then had a big one the next day. But, for a long time has been very consistent, elite baseball player. Do you have any good, bad memories of Joey Votto's crushing of the Cubs that you either laugh at or drive you crazy?
I wish I would have thought about this more before I came on here, because I'm not there's not one in particular moment that just really is coming to my mind right now. It's just like every moment that he plays the Cubs because he just destroys them. He destroys just about everybody. But I mean, and I'm a Cubs fan that loves Joey Votto. Even though he kills our team, I absolutely love watching him play. I think he's a great dude. I think he does a lot for the fans too. And the one thing I will say, there was something that happened. There was a video of him coming into Wrigley Field that is coming to mind now too. And I can't remember exactly what happened with that, but I love that video of him coming.
He didn't have his wallet.
He didn't have his wallet?
So he couldn't get into, the side to get the player's entrance. The guy
was right.
Yeah. He's like, I don't know who you are. And he's like, he looks at the fans. He's like, I'm Joey Votto. Tell him I'm Joey Votto.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And the guy was like, I don't really care. You can come in. We let him in.
Okay, somebody knows you. I'll let you in. How do you not know who Joey Votto is?
Yeah. Especially working at a ballpark.
He never gets recognized at
all.
It's
just baseball, man. It sucks. Baseball players.
He was telling me something like that he went to a wedding, and he's like, that's probably the most that I've ever gotten noticed was being in that small town and people asking for autographs. He's like, outside of Cincinnati, he hardly gets any at all.
Wow.
It's probably also kind of awesome at the same time.
Oh, he loves that.
Yeah.
For sure.
Can kind of skate under the radar a little bit.
Go to a restaurant and just enjoy your meal without, people recognize you and stuff. That's nice.
Well, no. I only say that jokingly because for some reason or another, when you guys had Alfonso Soriano, I think every time I went to a Reds Cubs game, he did some had some bomb against us that just crushed me.
You just crushed my heart. You just brought me back a flashback because I don't think I've even showed y'all that. That was the first home run I ever gave up to. So my debut was against the Cubs. Second game that I went in, I got an out, and then I think Cedeno had an infield single, which was bullshit. And then I think I walked a guy, and then I hung a 3-2 screwball to Soriano, and he hit it to the upper deck. I mean, whoo! As soon as he started swinging, I was like, "Ah!" And boom! There it goes to the moon. That was my moment on ESPN.
He would when they came to Cincinnati, because Cubs fans always come to, and my first couple years of season tickets were in left field, and Soriano played left field. So of course the Soriano kept happening every game around me, and of course I'm rolling my eyes. And then it'd be like they would have like Johnny Cueto in his prime, and he would like work him to like get some crazy hit off him. So yeah, your Joey Votto stories are very similar to my Alfonso Soriano stories.
Yeah, Soriano was one of those guys like you're just like scared to throw to because you don't know what to throw because he'll swing at anything wherever it is because he's got a 39-inch bat and he'll swing it at wherever. He was like Gary Sheffield or Vlad. Like those guys will swing and hit it hard no matter where it's at.
Joey, what's your thoughts on Amir Garrett?
I can't stand the guy. Sorry. I can't.
A lot of
stand
Reds
the
fans
guy.
can't either. Don't worry.
Yeah, I don't want to be that dude who just like bashes players or whatever. I don't know. Maybe the Javi Baez though was probably that walk off like sack fly or whatever it was. I don't even know if it was camped under or not, but the walk off game winner against Garrett where he was just walking down the line and just talking to him the entire way, and whatever he was doing, waving in the air. That was probably one of my favorite moments of this past year.
That was a wild series because that was the series that was getting traded. It was like you had like that great moment for you guys on Monday, and then like the rest of the week was just crazy. It's okay. You're supposed to not like Amir Garrett. Like,
Yeah.
I wouldn't think you're a real Cubs fan if you liked Amir Garrett. So
I don't know many like other fans of other teams that really like him either, though. So
The Reds fans don't really like him much either. So
I do.
Yeah,
I'm
not saying we don't, but there's a lot of Reds fans who are very much okay if he does not pitch for them again.
We're all massive Amir Garrett fans here at Late Night Reds Talk Live. Every single one of us.
So he had kind of a down year this past year though, right? Like just on the field wise, just pitching.
He put a lot of pressure on himself too, because like right after the Rizzo Iglesias trade, he like came out and he's like, yeah, I'm the closer. And then they're like, all right, cool, prove it. And it was like the first, like one of the first outings he had, he gave up a grand slam, and it was pretty rough year.
He pitched pretty well the last like 3 or 4 months overall, especially some of like his expected numbers. He just got to just such an awful start the first 2 months. Like you're never going to recover as a reliever with like your ERA and things like that. But I think there was definitely some signs of life at the end. I don't know what you'll get out of him next year. I don't really know what you get out of any reliever year to year. I mean, I think they're so hit or miss.
I was looking at like last year. I was before the season. I really liked Lucas Sims. Like I thought he had some really good stuff. I was looking at like I know advanced analytics and stuff about the spin rates, and some people don't like that stuff, but I look into him and I know he was one of the top in the league. I think for his breaking ball, but probably all of his pitches, honestly, were just all up there, and he was insane. And then I know he didn't have as great of a year. I think he got hurt too, but Antone looked great too. So not to make this I know you guys are a Reds podcast, so I feel like it's all relevant. But yeah, I really like those two guys if they can. I don't know. You guys still have them this year, right?
Yeah, Antone's probably not pitching this year though.
Antone had Tommy John, so he's gonna be out all year. But yeah, I'm super high on Sims. He was really, really good at the end of the year. He had like 13 out of 14 outings without giving up a run. He had a really, really good run at the end of the year. Like he had like 20 strikeouts and 2 walks over that stretch or something like that. He was really dominant there at the end and seemed like he's figured it out. But yeah, I think he's gonna have a big year in 2022 for sure.
Yeah, I think a lot of those relievers that the younger relievers that excelled the last probably year to 3 years that everybody thought that were going to be decent relievers that became really good, like the last two that we talked about. And then halfway through the year last year they made a change on what you can do to the baseball, so that took some adjustment. And Sims, I talked about it all year, with Nick, even kind of like on a sidebar, like, hey, these numbers are kind of alarming. And then, Nick's like, he's just got to get used to it. And sure enough, by the end of the year, his spin rate was coming back up. And, He's throwing well. So I think the offseason is going to do guys like them, not just in the Reds bullpen, but everywhere else. It's going to do them a lot of justice to be able to get used to that ball and what they can and cannot do to that ball anymore, because that's a very big deal.
That's a great point.
And before we do kind of get to like the rest of the show, just talking about the best and worst case scenarios for the Cubs, I do have to ask this very serious question, Joey. When I've made my trips,
this isn't serious.
when I've made my trips to Wrigley, have frequented Wrigleyville. Big fan of Wrigleyville. It's a great time for anyone who hasn't gone. You can definitely drop a lot of money there very easily. What would you say is probably your favorite spots in the Wrigleyville area? Obviously not the Cubby Bear, because you're not getting in there for 3 hours after the game. But what would you say is the best spot for if people are making their voyage this year, they should hit up in Wrigleyville?
Probably Murphy's.
Yep.
I really like Murphy's a lot. I think it's just a great spot. But I also think, it's tough for me to say like where everybody goes. I know a lot of people like to go to Murphy's, but I don't get to make it to Wrigley as much as I'd like because I'm actually in Rockford. So it's not that far from here, but I don't make it as much as other people. So if I had to choose one, though, I'd probably choose Murphy's for sure.
I love me some Wrigleyville, man. I've had a lot of fun nights there.
You can, though, like you said, you can spend a lot of money. And it's
Yes, you
always a
can.
great time, but it can get up there.
My first time I went to Chicago to see the Reds and Cubs, it was like 2011, September. So both teams are like totally out of the race. Like at this point, I think the Reds finished like 4 games under 500. The Cubs were like, that was one of their 100 loss seasons. And these Cub fans were like, they brought us like me and my buddies around. They're like, why are you guys here? These teams are terrible. And we're like, well, we got on StubHub and the tickets were $3 to sit on the first baseline. So we're like, hell, we'll make the drive up. And they're like, all right, we're going to take you around. We're going to show you all the different places. So they took us to Murphy's. They took us to the Cubby Bear. They took us a few different places. So we were definitely appreciative of that. And like, there were some Reds fans that tried to fight those guys. And we're like, we're not with them. They're like, we were kind of hoping if they jumped us, you guys would help us out actually. So
I got to make a trip though. Now that you say that, I need to get out to Cincinnati and catch a Cubs Reds game because that's something I haven't never been to Great American Ballpark.
Opening day, right?
Yeah.
Is it opening day
Cubs?
this year?
Mm-hmm. If we
is it the
start
Cubs or the
time.
Cardinals?
I think it's the Cardinals.
One of those two terrible franchises. Either one.
I think.
No, I think it's the Cubs.
Oh no, it is the Cubs. We talked about Wade Miley potentially until Stroman got signed.
Yeah, it is the Cubs.
Yeah, it is the Cubs. You're right. Yeah. You should come to Great American Ballpark. It'd be like a home game for you. So
It is like a home game.
I mean, it's literally like 80% Cubs fans.
It sounds right up my alley.
You'll have a great time.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so before we did talk about the Cubs, one last thing we need to mention about the Reds is a nice international signing that happened this week. The Reds signed shortstop Ricardo Cabrera. He was the number 3 international prospect, I think, if I have that correctly. So signed out of Venezuela. He has 5-tool potential. And it's this guy, obviously, a lot of Reds fans are excited about. It just so happened, of course, Nick, that this happened the week we don't have Aram on, that they make this big signing right after.
Yeah. So I'm certainly not an expert on the international draft by any
Not one
stretch. I tried to brush up on it a little bit. It's just the U.S. players that were born in the U.S., Canada, or Puerto Rico. So, and then everyone else is a free agent. So, not when you say international, it's not like he was the number 3 player out of all the international players, which I think is kind of deceiving. But you hope you've struck gold. Wander Franco was an international. Was the number 1 pick in that. The only other player I was looking through the last couple of years of him, the only other player that the name stuck at least that has made the majors was Vladimir Gutierrez, was the number 2 pick a couple years ago. So hey, you never know. I think this is more of a lottery ticket, and you just see what happens. But I wouldn't bank on him making the majors. But hey, nice to see the Reds, at least getting up for one of the top guys, that was available.
So wild that they can get these guys so young.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, yeah, he's 17 years old. I mean, it's going to be a long haul. We'll forget about him probably before he.
I can't wait 7 years from now whenever he has to reenact this picture whenever he's an all-star. Like, go get your Reds jersey and that bow tie, buddy. Let's do this again.
Hopefully by that point the Reds had different jerseys.
That was the best picture I could find, and I search a lot and try to make it look as good as I can. That was the best I could get.
Well, no, that was like the main one. I saw that one everywhere, and that's what I thought immediately. I was like, "Ooh, that bow tie."
Yeah,
that's gonna come back to haunt you, Ricardo.
Not a whole lot out there. So Joey, I did before we get out of here. Thank you so much. Really enjoyed having you on, and hearing I love following the rest of the NL Central teams. Like, when the season gets going, like I feel like I follow, all 4 teams, at least until the one of them's out of the break. I didn't really follow the Pirates too much, after like a week. But
should you ever?
But I enjoy following. I mean, these are rivals, and if they lose, it helps the Reds. So I'm all in on that. What do you think is the best case scenario and the worst case scenario for the Cubs in 2022?
Best case scenario, they make more additions here in the offseason post lockout and actually compete for the division, because I mean the Cardinals, we've seen them stumble at times, and maybe the Brewers deal with some injuries to their pitching rotation. If their rotation suffers any injuries, not saying I hope for that at all, but because they have a dominant rotation, but
he's definitely the Nick Kirby of the Cubs. I love it.
Mm-hmm.
But if that happens, hey, like you could compete for the division. It's possible. It's always possible. And I don't think that this division is the strongest right now. And I know I'm saying that looking at all these Reds fans here. It's just not the strongest right now. So
don't worry.
But wild card, maybe that's a potential. I think honestly, this team really is probably looking at like close to a 500 finish this next year, and it's more of a transition period year. And we're really shooting for 2023. Is kind of how I'm looking at that. But what would be really cool to me, and we have this in common too, Nicholas Castellanos. I know you guys are probably sad to see him opt out. I loved him in a Cubs uniform. I know they might not spend that money for him, but
don't you speak that into existence, Ricotta? He
could come back to the Cubs. There's always that possibility. We do have some spots that we could use him in. So Nicky Two Bags would look great in the Cubs uniform.
I haven't even heard that all off season, and now you just put that in my head and piss me off.
You're not welcome back here ever again, Ricotta.
Damn it.
I thought I was never going to speak it into existence, though. So now it's out there, though.
You guys still have Winker, though, and he's terrific. So,
yeah.
We actually got a question here. Do you hate the Cardinals and Brewers?
Yes.
Way worse than the Reds. Way worse.
Not the most hated. Let's go.
Yeah, man, I appreciate you coming on. It was a good time. Hopefully, maybe next year that we got a key series coming on. We can have you like the little preview action or something like that.
Yeah, definitely. I appreciate you guys having me on. It's been great talking ball with you guys. I would love to come back on again. Maybe I should have you guys on my podcast as well, because you guys are great to talk to, and that'd be awesome to do like a preview series or something. Maybe if I make my way down to Cincinnati, we can catch a Cubs Reds game together too.
Funny enough, I'm the only one here that actually lives in Cincinnati.
Well, hey, there you go. We're going.
Yeah. So absolutely. Yeah, but before we do close out, please take a second. We love to give our guests a chance to shout themselves out, where people can find their work, find them on social media. The floor is yours, man. Take a second.
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter at TheRiot326. And, obviously we've been doing a ton of work at OnTapSportsNet.com. We got Cubs on tap. We really all Chicago sports. I'm doing the Bears on tap stuff too, covering the Chicago Bears. But I should be writing something up here coming up on Frank Schwindel, actually. I'm looking into seeing if his production is sustainable. Spoiler alert, it's not, but it could be pretty good. So I'm looking at that. Maybe Scott Efros article coming up too. Maybe a deep dive into him. He's a bullpen piece that we'll see if he makes the team or not this year. But so that, and then at Stuffing the Stat Sheet, I've got the podcast I'm going to hopefully start doing a little bit more of, and I've got articles, DFS stuff at primetimesportstalk.com as well. And then for the On Tap Bets show, follow at On Tap Bets. Love me some gambling. I like betting on sports a little bit. So I'm kind of the Pete Rose of Cubs fans, I feel like. So which he should be in the Hall of Fame.
You don't want to say that. You don't want to say
They're just went on ratings.
I love Pete Rose, man. As far as I think he should be in the Hall of Fame. But
oh yeah.
You guys don't like him?
We'll talk after the show.
Okay.
Well, with that being said, thank you all so much for tuning in. Hopefully you enjoy the first part of this series as we try to get us closer and closer to the regular season. Also, super awesome to have Joey on. Please, I made this mention last week. The usual 5-star reviews. You can do that on Apple Podcasts. Now you can do reviews on Spotify. So Spotify is your podcast provider of choice. Please take a second to give us a nice review there. And yes, if you want to sign up for Bet Online, believe 50 for 50% off on your first deposit. So thank you all for tuning in. Have a great night. We'll be back next week. Go Reds. Since Joey's here and we share an affiliation for the same NBA team. Go Bulls.